As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as Jesus sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when Jesus heard this, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players in the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, Jesus went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. The gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Our gospel reading today begins with Jesus seeing Matthew sitting at a tax booth and saying to him, "Follow me." Now, whenever this text came up and I had kids, for the children's sermon, I would always ask if they wanted to play a game called Follow Me. And so I would have all the kids line up, and then I would walk all around, and the kids would all follow me, and we'd come back up, and I'd say, "Now close your eyes and follow me. Don't peek, just close your eyes. Keep them closed and follow me." Well, of course you can't, right? And so they would just be standing there confused, and I'd be walking all around, and, it would be confusing. Because the whole point of, following somebody is you see them. You see them, and you want to go where they are going. And so Jesus, I always think this is interesting, Jesus first sees Matthew, before Matthew probably sees Jesus, and he says to follow me. But in the Greek, this word is not about seeing the person and following them. It's not a physical sight. It's a way of knowing that in this person, there is something that you want to attach yourself to. Let me see if I've got a definition here. Yeah. It's more than walking behind. It denotes a deliberate, whole-person response of attachment, obedience, and ongoing companionship. And in the New Testament, it is the primary verb for discipleship, so that it encapsulates the life of the one who hears Christ's call, abandons all competing allegiances, and continues in loyal fellowship with Jesus. Follow me. Matthew gets up, leaves his work at the table, leaves the office. How many of us have ever wanted to do that? And follows Jesus. Now, it doesn't say this in here, but the next step, it seems to me, is that Jesus follows Matthew, because Matthew takes Jesus to his house. And so now Jesus is following Matthew, and what he now experiences and encounters are Matthew's friends. And they're dining together. Now, eating together is really significant still in many, many cultures. Eating is not just, company and pleasure and stuff. It is a ritual. It is a sign. It is an embodiment of establishing relationships, of saying we, by eating together, are community. In fact, I don't think it's in the Old Testament. It just might be something I learned like in Middle Eastern culture where, although I think when you eat with somebody, they say that there's a certain amount of time before the food that you eat is expelled. So during that time that your host's food is in your stomach, you are considered their family. This host will protect you at all costs, will love you, will cater to you, will treat you as family. But once that food is expelled, then the bets are off. And there's the story told of a man who had heard that his son had been defeated in battle and was grieving, and some of the soldiers from the enemy came and asked for hospitality, and so he extended that to them, and in the course of talking discovered that one of the men that he had fed was the man that had killed his son. And so for 3 days he showed them exquisite hospitality, was as wonderful as can be, and then after 3 days when the men left, the man was free to go and kill the man that killed his son. Eating together is a serious thing. And Jesus is eating with Matthew, a tax collector, who is considered a traitor by the Jewish people. And the Romans don't like him that much more either, because the Jewish people know that he's skimming stuff, and the Romans know that he's skimming stuff from him. So both sides, they don't like the tax collectors. So we have here tax collectors and sinners, and it doesn't define sinners. And so when I read this, I'd like to think that I'm at that table too, because I'm a sinner, and I want to be eating with Jesus. Now, what I find interesting here is that it says that the Pharisees see him. Okay. How? They've obviously been following Jesus, following via the visual sign, wanting to see if they can trip him up, wanting to see what he's up to. What are the things this Jesus is doing that they're hearing about that they can call him out on? And so they probably watched him call Matthew. They followed him to the house, and they're peeking in. They're spying on Jesus. And they see him eating with the sinners. Now, they're outraged, but rather than what I would encourage all adults to do, the healthy thing is to go to the person that you are upset with and talk to them. But the Pharisees do what's the easiest thing to do, and they triangle, and they go to the disciples. Hey, your boss is really doing something bad here. What's the deal? What's up with that? And Jesus overhears them. And so Jesus says to them that what the Lord desires is mercy and not sacrifice. And did you hear that earlier in the service? It's in that first reading here. This first reading from Hosea, and this is what Jesus is quoting, and there's another text in the Old Testament as well. This reading from the prophet Hosea is talking about the nation of Israel and saying, the Lord says, I will return again to my place, to my people, the people that I've called, that I've established a relationship with. We have a covenant with each other. We've eaten together. And I'm bypassing the 3-day thing. This is a permanent meal. I will return again to my place until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face. In their distress, they will beg my favor. Come, let us return to the Lord. for it is he who is torn, and he will heal us up. What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes away early. It's temporary. You love me when you need me. You love me when something's wrong. Oh, can you fix this? We really need some help here. But then it's gone. I have called you to be my people. The things that you do to try and get my attention to say, hey, yeah, we're good, Jesus, is they offer sacrifices. That's what the law says, right? So we offer you all this great stuff. We'll burn things for you, but we won't love you forever until we need you again. It's the nations that have turned away from God. And God says, that's not what I wanted. And these offerings aren't the way to get my attention or to say, this is that I want to make our relationship right. Sacrifices don't tell me that you're going to make this right. You know what does, though? Show mercy. When you live in ways that show mercy to the people that keep getting hurt because of how nations operate, that get hurt because we keep saying that they're untouchable, that get hurt because we cast them out of the community because we don't like the way they live or who we think they are. When you show mercy to them, this is when we are together as the people that I intended us to be. So Jesus is with those sinners, and the Pharisees are upset, and Jesus calls them out on this, using the lesson from Hosea and that to say, you are the people that are supposed to be keeping us in relationship with God. You're the people that are supposed to be modeling this behavior. You're the ones that are supposed to be teaching us, building us up, showing what it is like, and you are the very people who never show mercy. You never show mercy. You're as bad as the tax collectors skimming off of the burnt offerings that they bring to you. You're skimming off of stuff. You're thinking that your righteousness is so good that you become full of pride. That's not what I'm asking. But they don't really get that. And I do have to say, we missed this again in the English. I brought this up in our class. I love the way Jesus does this too, because he says, go and learn what the prophet says. That term, go and learn, is it's a term that rabbis use to their students that don't have a clue and need to go back and do their homework again and get the subject right. So I just love that. And I imagine the Pharisees hearing this. Here's this son of a carpenter, this itinerant guy that hasn't had any education. They're very well educated. They've been in their jobs for years, hearing, go and learn. I understand the law, Jesus. I'm going to kick dirt on you. And I love that. I want mercy and not justice. A leader of the synagogue coming up before him saying, my daughter has just died. Come and lay your hand on her and she will live. And Jesus could say, well, I'm in the middle of dinner. I'm with the sinners. This is good. I'm helping them. Your daughter's dead. I find a couple things interesting in this, or I guess one of the things I find interesting is that this religious leader of the synagogue, which means he's up there with Pharisees, he's a leader, that he has heard about Jesus and has followed in the sense of the emotional relationship, has entered into this home with the sinners in front of the Pharisees who are watching. So he's risking his reputation, he's risking his status, his cleanliness, but he's doing it also for a daughter. A daughter is not as valuable as a son. And in this day, the child mortality was about 60%. A lot of children died. This man is not like a lone parent that's lost somebody. There are a lot of parents there. I don't mean that it doesn't hurt, but they also understand that happens. And he's doing it for a daughter. Jesus immediately gets up and starts to go because he has mercy. He has mercy for the least of these, for the ones that we think don't have value, for the ones that we think made their own mess. She's a girl. It's her fault. And as he's going, a woman who's been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years comes and touches the fringe of his cloak. The fringe represent prayer, are the prayer tassels. They're a very important part of the cloak. They're the constant reminder as you walk that you are to walk in prayer. And she touches that. She does not address Jesus. She believes the object of her faith is not in herself by touching it. The object of her faith is Jesus. She has followed Jesus. And she's touched him, which, had he been a different person, he probably could have had her killed because she's just defiled him. He's now would be considered unclean because she touched him. Instead, he blesses her and he sends her on her way. Everybody sees. There's an urgency at the dinner. There's an urgency with the man whose daughter died. But Jesus still sees and stops and tends and cares for a woman that has been outside of the community for 12 years. And now she's free to come back and to become who she is as a person. Maybe a seamstress, maybe a cook, maybe a mother, a wife. She can be that now. She's restored. And then Jesus goes on. He gets to the house. The child has died. People laugh at Jesus. And he goes in and he brings her back to life again. He defiles himself by touching a dead body, just by being in the house where there is a dead body. But it doesn't matter to him because cleanliness really has more to do with sacrifice than it does about mercy. Sacrifice is about proving yourself by keeping away from the things that are untouchable and dirty. And Jesus is not that kind of prophet, that kind of king, Son of God. He is one who sees and stops and tends to, because mercy is better than sacrifice. So I spent time this week thinking about mercy and thinking about cultivating the loving spirit of God in each of us. And where do we put those together? What are some things that we can do? And I went through a lot of things. I went through and looked more carefully at where there have been cuts in funding by legislation and seeing that there are people that are having difficulty with SNAP, with being able to buy food, with having changes in their Medicare, their Medicaid. There are people that are not considered citizens as they had been. There have been a lot of changes. And all of those groups of people need mercy. They need mercy. And we can step into some of that. Claire's going to tell or give an announcement about a meeting tomorrow at 8 o'clock, talking about some things that I think it would be good if some of us would attend. But I was also with John and Arminda last week, and Arminda was talking about La Luz, and she was talking about how they really need some help. The people there are struggling to be able to pay for electricity and to buy food and food pantries are low on supplies and things like this. And I was thinking about my congregation in Houston, and this was before the days of credit things, but we had a tab with a grocery store, and people would come to the church, and I would fill out this thing saying, please allow this person, and I would take a copy of their ID, and give them up to $35 worth of groceries, excluding cigarettes and alcohol. And then at the end of the month, they would charge us. We can do that now with cards. You know, buy $25 cards and give them to people as a bridge to help them just feed their families. That's mercy. I've been thinking, I don't know if y'all do this, but I fantasize sometimes about winning the lottery and what I'd like to do with some of that money. And I always think, I would love to, in the city that I'm living in, this is really crazy, I'd like to call the phone company and find 100 people who are having problems paying their phone bill. And I'd want to pay the phone bills for 100 people that month. Maybe pay in advance for 2 months. Ways of showing mercy to the people that are so often on the fringe and that we don't always see, but that are struggling to follow Jesus and touch his cloak. Mercy over sacrifice. It says here, and the report of this spread throughout the district. It wasn't a fire. It wasn't a great oral sermon. It was following a religious leader of the synagogue to his home, where his daughter was dead, because even she deserved mercy. That's who we follow. That's who we are. Amen.